So this is relatively a new process for the city. I'm going to just briefly describe what a DAM is and recognized community organization are. Give you a little bit of background on the slopes, and then we'll move forward quickly diving into this. So let me share my screen here. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so so the Southside Slopes Neighborhood Association was approved as an RCO in July of 2020 by the Department of City Planning. Basically, what this means is that when an applicant goes to the city to request going before either the Zoning Board of Adjustment, the Planning Commission, the Historic Review Commission, or the Art Commission, they have to contact the RCO within the geographic area where their plan is being considered and schedule a development activity meeting. So these are, I'm sure as you guys know, public meetings where a city planner, in our case, Stephanie Joy, if she happens to jump on here, take notes, take attendance, and then we'll prepare these notes and the video recording of this meeting that's then made public on the city planning website. They're really meetings designed to give a better, to better inform the public and our community about development activities that are taking place within our neighborhoods, and to give you an opportunity to ask questions, voice any concerns, and really to learn more about these projects that are being presented. So let's see, RCO, ZBA, DAM. Okay, so there's over a dozen reasons that that will trigger a DAM. In this case, if I'm not mistaken, Shimon, you guys are going to be disturbing over 50% of the area in the Hillside community. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, great. So you're going to be presenting in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And when you do get that date, if you can forward that on to me, we'll make that publicly known on our website, and be sure to include that in our future communications. Okay, so there's only 3 of us. It's going to be short and sweet. And again, if you have any questions, just go ahead and speak up, and I'm sure Shimon or myself can help answer them. Let's see. Normally I would talk about our history here. I'll keep it brief. The Neighborhood Association was formed about 20 years ago, and it's really our mission to maintain, foster, and improve the quality of life, safety, and unity within the Slopes neighborhood. We've been acting as an advocate, and we're proud to act as an advocate for our neighbors, really while focusing on different aspects for the Slopes. These include improving public safety, working with the public and private sectors to improve our overall housing stock, creating and maintaining public and green spaces, and encouraging community spirit while providing, really up-to-date information on current and pertinent issues. So we're happy to be recognized by the city, and we're going to continue working in this capacity. So as I mentioned, our presentation this evening is focused on the development of a 3-story single unit dwelling at 1611 St. Patrick's Street. We have Shimon from Indovina Architects, is that correct?
Yep.
That's great to give our presentation tonight. If there are any questions, I certainly don't have any. I'll turn it over to Shimon here, and once he's completed, we'll talk about next steps.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and make you the host here, Shimon.
Okay, so let me figure out this. Oh, yeah, 1 second. You'd think I know how to work Zoom by now, right? After
I say the same thing, but I think every time I get off of it, I try to think about it less and stay away from it as far as possible.
Exactly. I think we should be good. Let's see. Okay. So in theory, you should be seeing my screen right now.
Ed, can you see that, bud?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great. So yeah, thank you, Blake, for that introduction. Again, this is 1611 St. Patrick Street in the Southside Slopes neighborhood. We are proposing to construct a new 3-story single-family residence. The lot and block of the parcel is 13E120.
Okay, in here. All right.
And
You need anything?
the lot area of the parcel is just over 5,100 square feet. The building footprint that we're proposing is 1,335 square feet. And in terms of finished area of the residence, it's going to be just about 4,000 square feet, 4,000 square foot residence. So from a zoning standpoint, this is within the zoning code, this is governed by section 905.02. The site development standards in the Hillside zoning district are really, as far as setbacks are concerned, you know, we don't have setbacks to be contending with. However, we do have the maximum area of disturbance at 50%. And so based on what we'll be seeing in the site plans, you know, we'll see that we had to exceed that 50% in disturbance, which kind of brings us to this meeting here. So if you could see my cursor, the project location, we're sort of kind of adjacent to that quarry field, really at the intersection of St. Patrick, and some maps call it Sabre Way, some call it Quarry Road. So I think that the proper designation is Sabre Way for that intersection. And so we could go over to the next slide here. And this kind of gives you a bit of an aerial understanding. So location map 1, again, we're you know, it's kind of like a pizza slice shaped site, somewhat of an irregular site that's you know, as a result of the confluence of you know, St. Patrick and Sabre Way. And so this just gives you an aerial of what we're seeing. And right now, as we see in the existing site, number 2 on sheet 2, it's a vacant lot. So my understanding is that at some point there was a structure residence there before, which I assume was obviously, you know, knocked down before our involvement in this project. So we're dealing essentially with a vacant lot.
Did you buy it from Snail Houses?
You know, we Snail Houses is our client, so that's
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So we're the architect representing the client. Yep. So again, pizza shape, kind of triangular, irregular site. The next slide shows some of the existing conditions of the parcel. You know, and this will be borne out a little bit more when we look at the existing survey. But certainly some slopes existing on that site, kind of off the property lines. But then we also have some sloping conditions adjacent to St. Patrick Street. So this kind of gives you a sense of the existing site and the existing disturbance on that site. So if we move on to sheet 4, this sheet basically shows our existing site survey, image 1, and the proposed grading plan that we're going to be working with. So actually, I think what might be helpful is if I zoom in a little bit on this plan, give us a sense of kind of those existing conditions. So just off the site here, there's an existing residence, an existing house. As you see the corners adjacent to St. Patrick Street, there is quite a bit of slope that's happening. But then right around 977 mark where my cursor is, we have a pretty nice flat area that we could actually build on. And so for the most part, as far as the existing grade is concerned, we're really kind of working with that 977 contour in terms of kind of placing the existing slab of the house. There's an existing retaining wall here that's not going to be disturbed. And then our access point is really going to be here. And I'll illustrate that in the next slide over. So here.
Do you feel,
Yeah.
let me interrupt, do you feel that existing retaining wall that he put up, do you think that's adequate?
So you know what, there is some discussion about that, and we're working with Domi and a structural engineer to come up with a solution to reinforce that wall.
Okay.
So we're not planning. You see, And there has been some discussion. I mean, this is a project that we've been working on for a number of years. And so my sense is I really don't want to disturb that wall. I don't want to remove it. I would want to reinforce it. And so that's kind of the
Okay.
with
Yeah, I
that.
just want to make sure that that it's being thought about.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's a great question. That's a phenomenal question. Yeah, it's been addressed and discussed. So moving on to our grading strategy, kind of our grading plan. What we want to do is we want to develop a driveway, essentially, that's going to lead, into lead you into the residence. We're providing kind of a turnaround area here. And basically you'll notice a 977 contour, right? That's essentially what we're working with in terms of grades. Essentially, we're trying to create a 5% slope with our driveway. And so we're going to have very minimal disturbance kind of in this area here, because we can work with those existing slopes. The one place where we are going to experience some amount of regrading is really going to be at those sides. Making sure that we're working with a condition that's a little bit more amenable, to planting and just kind of access. So 977 is kind of that contour that we're working with, and essentially we end up rising to about 986 or so. So that gives us about 9 feet of rise. And then beyond that, we're trying not to really disturb the site at all. We're shooting for mostly, there's one area where we're about 25% disturbance, but really we're not trying to maximize and go above 20% or so with our grading strategy. Except in some areas we're kind of, we're just trying to work with those existing grades. So that's essentially our grading strategy. The next slide over is just a bit more of a site plan to kind of illustrate the intent of what's going to be occurring on the site. So again, it's going to be a 9-foot driveway. It will be paved by asphalt. We will have 2 parking spaces inside the garage, which is basically going to be a slab on grade construction. We're going to kind of wrap a little bit of a retaining wall. This is going to be a 6-foot retaining wall, and that's going to help us kind of pick up some of those grades and kind of frame in this driveway a little bit. So again, we'll notice there's really very little disturbance happening adjacent to our driveway. Very little disturbance happening kind of to the left of our house, but then we're going to kind of pick up some slope and feather the site out just a little bit to make it a little bit more amenable to construction. So the big question, right? Site disturbance and a strategy for minimizing site disturbance. So this diagram shows anywhere where we are providing any type of regrading of the site, and anywhere where construction will be occurring. So as a graphic, we can kind of zoom out a little bit and see. So again, we're trying to be minimally invasive onto the site. And so essentially what we're coming up with is, again, we have a lot size of 5,109 square feet. Our disturbance area is going to be 3,525 square feet in that ballpark. So we're shooting at about 69% disturbance for the site here. And so the next slide that I would like to introduce, and we are kind of moving faster here, so if there are any questions, obviously, just tell me, hey, you're going way too fast. The next slide I'd like to introduce is just kind of our planting strategy, our planting plan, which again, when you're dealing with sloping land, there is some complexity in that planting plan. So this is a little bit more of a complex plan than you would typically see in a residential development. But basically in the legend, what I want to do is quickly walk you through kind of the requirements and then essentially how we're addressing those requirements. So per the code, anywhere where we're exceeding 15% slope in our disturbance, so basically required for the construction or site preparation, you're going to see that there's that area is identified by a heavy dashed line. So that's roughly where my cursor is here. This is our main area where we're exceeding 15%. There's another pocket here where we're exceeding 15% as well. So based on the overall area of that 15% or over disturbance, basically based on that, we have to quantify and calculate additional replanting strategies that are part of the code. So we're at 600 square feet of disturbance over 15%. And so based on zoning code 915.02.b, it requires 1 canopy tree, 2 understory trees, 2 evergreen trees, 5 shrubs for any disturbance per every 150 square feet, right? So at 600 square feet, really we multiply by 4. So what that means is we need to have 4 canopy trees, 8 understory trees, 8 evergreens, and 20 shrubs, essentially, to kind of meet the minimal standards of 19.915.02.b. And in addition to that, we need to provide, and I think this is more of a question. We need to provide 4 street trees again, and that's a separate, separate code. I guess one thing I'm not exactly sure of if the 915 requirement could be counted towards the 918 requirement, and I'm not clear on that. I don't know, Blake, if you are aware.
I'm not.
Yeah, so that's kind of nebulous, and so that might be a point where we might have to revise our planting plan just a little bit to provide a little bit more trees. But essentially, and another point that's important to make is that right now there are no trees with a diameter of 12 or more, on the site. So essentially, we're not removing any trees. And so here's our planting strategy. Again, this is where my cursor is right now. This is St. Patrick's Street here, kind of the frontage of our house. This is Sabre Way here. So we're going to be planting 2, let's see, what is my OV? Okay, these are my American hornbeams and Eastern redbuds. So that's basically anywhere you see the Australia, that's the OV. These are going to be American hornbeams. These grow to be, let's see, these, okay, well, let's see. I guess I didn't really include the full height, but actually these are trees, they're pretty high. I mean, these are gonna grow pretty high. We don't have any wires, overhead wires to contend with, so these are gonna be probably in your 30 feet or so at a mature height. On the other side, we're gonna be planting Cercis canadensis. These are Eastern redbuds, which have really a beautiful spring flowering color. So that's going to be a really nice asset. I would really say for the site itself, but also surrounding areas as well. So these are going to be our MDs, our Siberian cypress. It's actually a very low growing evergreen kind of mounded shrub. Our RA is going to be interspersed into kind of the rear side of the lot where there's a little bit more slope. Again, this is kind of like a mounded ground cover that has some nice interest all 4 seasons. And then 13 FGs, these are going to be forsythias, a gold tide forsythia, which is also kind of like a mounded or so low growing ground cover shrub. So essentially where we're seeing the planting is where we're experiencing a little bit more of that slope. And in addition to our shrub and tree coverage, we also have a strategy for ground cover, covering the slope. So essentially we will be, anywhere we see kind of this dashed kind of rain pattern, this is going to be Frigeria virginiana, which is really a good ground cover for slope regeneration. And then it's kind of a little bit hard to see here, but anywhere where we kind of have this dashed, kind of like a dotted speckled condition, that's 980 square feet of, and I'll give the common name because that's, who wants to pronounce epimedium versicolor. right? So basically a combination of Bishop's Hat and Wild Ginger, about 50% each. So essentially what we're proposing is in this area here, we're going to be doing kind of our 50% of that, Bishop's Hat and Wild Ginger. On this side, we're going to be proposing an entire coverage of the Scarlet Strawberry, which is actually a really neat looking ground cover. And it's quite nice for slope regeneration. And really anywhere where we don't have slope conditions, that's just going to be kind of long grass, like a typical tall fescue turf grass. So that's essentially the planting strategy. We want to be conscious of the slope regeneration, and we also want to be conscious of providing a variety of trees that have really nice interest throughout the seasons and things like that, that will screen the house a little bit, but also be an asset to not just the home itself, but really the neighborhood as well. I think it'll be quite nice. So the last few slides here are kind of elevations, just to give a sense of what that building, the house is going to look like. We're going for a fairly contemporary aesthetic in the construction and design of the house. Anywhere where you see kind of those vertical lines, that's a board and batten fiber cement cladding. It's going to be a rain screen product basically. And then anywhere where we see kind of our horizontal paneling, that's also fiber cement, and that's going to be just a 4x8 fiber cement rain screen paneling. So again, a contemporary building. At the really, this is kind of the side elevation of the house, although this is the front entrance to the home. We have our 2-bay garage, the main entrance into the home. Where my cursor is now is our first level, second level, and then our third level. This is the type we had to do a grade plane calculation, to make this house work. And so what you're noticing here is that at elevation 9.9, that's our average grade plane based on kind of the site conditions, the prevailing slope conditions of the home. The next slide, I believe slide 8, this is the elevation from St. Patrick Street, kind of that side elevation, but we're looking at it just a little beyond the street itself. So we're kind of seeing the 3 main stories of the house. And what's going to be kind of prominent is that rear patio on the 3rd floor of the house itself. This next elevation is looking, basically St. Patrick is kind of where my cursor is now. We could kind of refer to this as the rear of the house. This is kind of the main slope coming off of St. Patrick, and it tapers off along where Saberway would exist, and then obviously slopes even more down towards that road. So this is an elevation, more or less will be seen from the existing property, kind of just north of the project north of our development. And the final elevation, this is kind of the Saberway elevation, kind of the side. So here's the main entrance into the garage from the side. We have some additional patios, patio spaces, and that's that rear patio that's existing at that 3rd floor. So really, that's the bulk of our presentation. We are at a point where we are obviously going to be presenting this at the ZBA and requesting a variance to be able to kind of exceed our 50% site disturbance. As a bit of a background, this is a project that's kind of gone through zoning a little bit. Where we landed is we really, we had a plan where we tried to hit that 50% benchmark. But boy, it just kind of made for a very tight site. And even the zoning review at that time kind of concluded that it's like, even though on paper you're kind of hitting that 50%, but it's a very difficult site to manage. A residence that's a workable residence at that 50% was kind of a very strong limiting factor. So with this design that we're presenting now, we were still very cognizant not to like go overboard with our request for site disturbance, but it's kind of hitting what we see as kind of the minimal requirement for disturbance in order to kind of produce this type of residence. So that's kind of where we find ourselves right now. So Blake, to your point, that our next step, after our DAM process concludes, we'll reach out to SSSNA and I guess request the ZBA. But I guess maybe I'll ask you what the next steps are, in the process and how we proceed.
Yeah, so from our end, what'll happen is once we conclude the meeting, we basically have a 30-day period of time where we will continue to receive and submit any feedback from the community. We'll then give a formal opinion, if you will, to the ZBA about this project, given any feedback that we've received. And then in that line of communication, we'll make sure to include you and any other interested parties in that formal opinion. And then that's basically it. It's my guess is you'll go back tomorrow and probably get a date for the ZBA 5 weeks out. They seem to be moving relatively quickly in Q4 of this year. Do you know, can you give just a general timeline about the project? When you hope to be able to start the project? I mean, is this into Q1 next year, Q2? And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is actually an interesting project in that, so let's think about this. We actually submitted our initial zoning ZDR application back in 2019. This is going back over 2 years ago. And at that time, concurrent review started. So we actually finished, we actually have PLI approval for the project, but zoning got stalled, mostly because we were trying to figure out how to make the site work at 50% disturbance. Really, we can't. So as PLI was flying, zoning was kind of moving back and forth. So really, when can we build this? I mean, I think, the owner would love to build this today if he can.
Sure.
But we're probably looking at spring 2022, just so that from a constructability standpoint, pouring footers and things like that in the winter is just not advisable. So assuming we can move through ZBA, and assuming that we can kind of resolve any domey issues with that wall reinforcement, my optimistic goal that I would love is to be able to start construction, like let's say March, April,
Okay.
Because I know that the owner of the residence is really eager to like live here, So
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I can imagine. And then do you, I know that there's, so questions I'm sure that the community might have. There's currently a bunch of, I'm sure on one of your site visits, you've seen the amount of construction that's going on, specifically at that corner, and then directly across the street where I believe the gas and PWSA companies are currently kind of holding all of their heavy machinery. Are you familiar with that? Like literally right across. Oh, okay. So
no, it's been a little bit since I actually visited the site.
It might be worth just stopping down there, because literally right across the street from St. Patrick, there's probably 3/4 of an acre that is city-owned lot.
Well,
that has been graded out to hold anywhere between 4 and 10 heavy machines that are being used currently for gas and water line replacement throughout the slopes. That's been a project that started, I think, 6 months ago now, and my understanding is they're not going to have that done until Q1, but who knows how the winter goes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that might be worth your time and getting some considerations around what access you may or may not have, because at times St. Patrick Street from 18th Street is closed, and in fact the last 2 weeks it's been closed. So your only access to that site would literally be going through the small little access road by the Southside Bears field.
So is the assumption that replacement work will conclude in theory by like March 2022, or is there like a forecast of that or no?
So my understanding is that that's the current proposed timeline,
Mhm.
but frankly, having gone through water and gas line replacement on this side of the slopes, I know that those things
Yeah,
can easily and quickly get pushed back.
sure. Yeah.
That doesn't matter to us one way or the other, but it's definitely a consideration that you guys want to probably check in on.
Right.
The only other question I think that we might have from our neighborhood constituents is, do you have a general contractor selected for this already, or are you still going through the bidding process?
No, not yet, because I think until we could get a firm footing with zoning, it's not a project that we could even really bid out yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah, so that basically kind of gives you some understanding of the timeline on our end. Frankly, if we don't receive any comments, I'll likely reach out to you in the next 10 to 14 days and say, Shimon, here's the feedback. If any, here's what our intended opinion is going to be. And then basically just send that in and get you guys on your way.
Sure. Yeah.
Ed, do you have any additional questions or concerns at this point about the presentation or what you've seen?
No, I hope it meets with a level of acceptance. That site is, I actually sold him those lots quite a few years ago.
Really?
And
Really?
yes,
Nice. So you know the site.
yes. I mean, it's not as, the H zoning district specifications were written with more severe slopes in mind.
Yeah.
And this is not a severe slope, and what they're talking about is minimal, what I believe to be minimal site modifications. And I would hope that it gets everyone's blessing and they can get rolling with it, because that corner was a Japanese knotweed memorial garden for 25 years or more, and it's nice to see it heading into a positive direction.
Right. So what was it like? What was their house?
Well, I was just being silly there. I mean, it was just overgrown Japanese knotweed, that was 10 feet tall.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're all very eager. Like, we're all very excited and eager to get this thing kind of moving forward and with a good trajectory that it could get built soon.
Sure. Great. Okay, well, just for the record, I want to thank you, Shimon, for making and taking time to give us this presentation. There's just a few additional next steps. If you have any additional comments, those can be shared with us at the Southside Slopes Neighborhood Association via email at info@southsideslopes.com. Again, this project is presenting in front of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, date TBD, and you can provide public comment either by emailing the ZBA directly, or you can send a letter to 200 Ross Street, 4th floor, Pittsburgh, 15129. Any additional announcements will be put on our website at southsideslopes.org. That's basically all I have. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Shimon, appreciate it. Ed, I hope you're feeling better and heading in the right direction there, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I bet. Well,
But that was a nice presentation, and if this is the level that the way these things are going to happen moving forward in the future, my applause to the organization and the city for getting things to this level of detail, because this isn't how we did it back in the old days. This is spectacular.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. I'll make sure that other people hear that level of appreciation as well. All right, gentlemen, I'll let you go. Enjoy your evening. Spend some time with your family. Call your moms, and I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye.